We live in a culture that obsesses over perfection. We call it ambition, excellence, high standards. We say things like "I'm just a perfectionist," as if it's a humble brag when in truth, it's often a cage. But what if perfectionism isn't the actual problem? What if, like Carl Jung hinted at in his deep psychological writings, perfectionism is only the mask? What if behind that mask is something far more terrifying, something most people never even dare to name? That maybe, just maybe, we're not actually afraid of failing. We're afraid of succeeding. Not afraid of being weak, but of being powerful. Jung believed that the human psyche is not just trying to avoid suffering, it's trying to avoid transformation. Because transformation requires confronting the parts of ourselves we've spent our whole lives suppressing. And among the most suppressed is our own potential, our strength, our decisiveness, our capacity to shape the world. We don't fear our limitations, we've made peace with those. What we fear is what would happen if we finally stopped hiding, if we stopped living in delay mode, if we stepped into the full gravity of who we actually are. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself that you're not ready yet? That you need to learn more, heal more, prepare more, perfect more before you take the leap, start the project, speak your truth. We've turned endless preparation into a virtue. But what if it's not preparation at all? What if it's avoidance dressed up as virtue? Jung said that the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, is not just made up of darkness. It contains light too. The light we were once punished for. The talents that made others uncomfortable. The confidence that was mistaken for arrogance. The voice that, when it spoke too loudly, was told to sit down. So we internalized a story that it's safer to be small, and that perfection is protection, that if we just follow the rules, polish every edge, earn our right to exist, then maybe we'll be safe. But safety isn't the same as freedom, and perfection isn't the same as power. The truth is, perfectionism is often a strategy to avoid responsibility. Because if you're always not quite ready, you never have to risk being exposed. You never have to take the leap. You never have to confront the terrifying truth that you might actually be capable of more.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's be honest, true power is uncomfortable. It doesn't just give you the ability to act, but it gives you the responsibility to act. And that responsibility can feel unbearable. Because once you admit that you can change your life, you lose the right to keep blaming the world for why you haven't. Jung said that most people don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. But what if darkness means the inner power we've labeled as dangerous? What if you've spent your life calling your own gifts too much, your own voice too loud, your own clarity too radical? And what if that's why you're exhausted, not because of how hard you work, but because of how much energy it takes to suppress who you really are? So here's the raw truth. You're not stuck because you're a perfectionist. You're stuck because you're terrified of what would happen if you weren't. Because if you stopped trying to perfect everything, you'd have no more excuses left. The mask would fall, and then you'd have to confront the brutal, beautiful, unavoidable question, what am I actually here to do? In that question is a portal. It's the beginning of a different kind of life, not a life of polishing, posturing, or waiting, but a life of choosing. Choosing to step into arenas you've avoided. Choosing to risk being seen. Choosing to stop perfecting and start becoming. But becoming is messy, it's raw, it's not symmetrical, it's not smooth, and it doesn't guarantee applause. That's why so many people choose perfection. It's safer. It gives you the illusion of control. But you can't control something as wild as your own becoming. You can only allow it. So let me ask you directly, what would happen if you stopped aiming for perfect and started aiming for true? What if you stopped asking, "Am I ready?" and started asking, "Am I hiding?" What if the fear you've been calling perfectionism is actually the fear of your own voice, your own authority, your own power to shape the world around you? Because here's what Jung knew: the greatest danger isn't your shadow, it's your refusal to integrate it. And that includes integrating your brilliance, your capacity to lead, your ability to create, to speak, to influence, to move people, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And real is powerful in a way perfection can never be. The terror of being seen, why we fear our own strength more than our flaws. There's a reason we keep ourselves small, even when we know we're capable of more. It's not because we're lazy, and it's not because we don't have time. It's because being seen is terrifying. Not just physically, not just socially, but existentially. To be seen, truly seen, is to risk being misunderstood, judged, rejected. But even deeper than that, to be seen is to be responsible. If people see us clearly, they'll start expecting something. They'll hold us to our potential, and then we can't hide behind the fog anymore. Then we have to show up. Jung understood this intimately. But he wrote that the greatest fear of the individual is not the fear of being weak, it's the fear of being strong. Because strength means visibility, and visibility means pressure. Perfectionism is attractive because it gives us a shield. It lets us hide behind the excuse that we're not quite ready. But readiness is a myth. There is no final moment when the fear goes away. There is only the choice to step forward while still afraid. We say we want success. We say we want to express ourselves, to lead, to create, to make an impact. But secretly, many of us are more comfortable in the preparation phase because no one criticizes what hasn't been born yet. We think failure is the monster under the bed. But often it's success we're running from. Because success exposes us. It forces us to live without the armor of hesitation, without the comfort of someday. It means people will watch, and they'll respond. Some will love what we do. Others will not. And when you step into your power, you can no longer hide behind the safety of potential. You become real. And real people are vulnerable. They bleed, they shake. They get misquoted, misread, misunderstood. But they live. And most people, deep down, are more afraid of living fully than they are of failing quietly. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly exposed by your own success? Maybe you hit a milestone and immediately felt anxious, like now you'd need to maintain the momentum or justify your worth. Maybe you published something and, instead of feeling proud, you felt like you wanted to disappear. These reactions aren't about imposter syndrome, they're about existential exposure. Jung believed that the psyche seeks wholeness, not safety. And wholeness means integrating not just your wounds, but your gifts. It means allowing your power to exist alongside your fear. But most of us can't do that because we equate power with danger. Maybe we were punished for our confidence. Maybe our creativity was dismissed. Maybe we learned that being visible meant being attacked. So we internalized a lie that if we just stay humble enough, invisible enough, small enough, we'll be safe. But safety is not the same as fulfillment, and hiding is not the same as humility. So let me ask you this: what would happen if you let yourself be seen? Not the curated version of you, not the polished, filtered, socially approved self, but the full, terrifying, magnetic truth of who you are. What if your perfectionism isn't about trying to get things right, but about trying to control the narrative? What if it's a way to delay the moment when the world finally sees what you're made of, and you have to see it too? Because once you see your power, you can't unsee it. And once you own it, you have to use it. And that's the part no one prepares you for. Not the fear of being inadequate, but the responsibility of being extraordinary. Jung called this the encounter with the self, when the ego meets the full scope of its own being. And it's not a gentle process. It's violent. It shatters illusions. It strips away excuses. It demands that you rise to the level of your truth, not your comfort. The irony is, we think hiding protects us, but it actually drains us. It takes so much energy to suppress your gifts, to dim your light, to keep your voice quiet when it's meant to echo. That's why you feel tired all the time. Not because you're broken, but because you're holding back, and holding back is exhausting. You were not built for a life of hesitation. You were built to move, to speak, to build, to create. And the longer you wait for perfect, the further you drift from real. So the question isn't, how do I become fearless? The question is, what would I do if I trusted myself enough to be seen? You don't need more time. You don't need more qualifications. You don't need more confidence. You just need to stop hiding behind perfectionism and start stepping into the messy, sacred, electric space of your own potential. Because the world doesn't need perfect people. It needs powerful ones. People who are willing to be seen, to be misunderstood, to be real. That's what Jung knew. That's what we've forgotten. And that's what you must now remember. The shadow of greatness, why we sabotage the very power we secretly crave. There's a paradox at the center of human potential that very few people are willing to confront. We crave greatness, and yet we sabotage it. We dream of rising, and yet we trip ourselves before the first step. We long to express our power, and yet we fear what that power might require of us. It's not that we don't want to be great, it's that we don't want the burden of greatness. And this is where Jung's insight becomes unnervingly precise. He said that the shadow isn't just composed of our shame, our wounds, our fears. It also contains our greatness, the parts of us too radiant, too forceful, too alive for the small cages we've built to survive. And so we exile our own strength. We push it into the dark. We call it too much. We say, I'm not that person. We pretend we're not ready. But deep down we know, the more we deny our greatness, the more we suffer. Because the psyche knows when it's being suppressed. And it will fight back through anxiety, through procrastination, through self-sabotage. Not because it wants to destroy us, but because it wants to wake us up. Let's be honest, some of the things you call bad habits are actually your soul trying to scream over the noise of your excuses. That late night anxiety, that restless boredom, that gnawing feeling that you're capable of more. Those aren't flaws. They're signals. They're the voice of the self, the part of you that remembers why you're here, trying to break through the persona you've constructed to keep the world from seeing how powerful you truly are. And the more you ignore that voice, the louder the chaos becomes. Because your greatness doesn't go away when you ignore it, it mutates. It turns inward. It becomes frustration. It becomes shame. It becomes self-doubt. And the tragedy is, we mistake that shame for evidence that we're not ready, when really it's evidence that we're resisting the very thing we're meant to become. Why do we do this? Because power is dangerous. Not in the Hollywood villain sense, but in the deeply personal, utterly destabilizing way that it threatens to rewrite your identity. Because once you own your power, you can no longer pretend to be helpless. You can no longer hide in the crowd. You can no longer blame your past, your parents, your circumstances for why you've stayed small. Stepping into your power means stepping out of your story. It means killing off the version of you that was built for survival and birthing the one that was built for impact. And that's terrifying. That's death. Not physical death, but ego death. The kind Jung said was essential for individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself. Because you cannot become who you're meant to be if you're still clinging to who you had to be. So we sabotage, we miss the deadline. We avoid the call. We downplay the opportunity. We say, it's not the right time, when really we mean, I'm scared of who I might become if I actually say yes. And this is where the spiritual rubber meets the road. Because the moment you say yes to your power is the moment you say yes to responsibility. Not duty, not obligation, but spiritual responsibility. That's the responsibility to live fully, to stop playing the victim, to stop pretending you don't know what you want, to stop acting like your voice doesn't matter, because it does. Your power matters, and your presence matters, your becoming matters. And the world is not waiting for your perfection. It's waiting for your permission. Permission to be seen, to be heard, to be real. So I'll ask you this: what part of you are you most afraid of? Not the part that fails, not the part that's messy, but the part that knows, the part that walks into a room and commands it without trying, the part that speaks and people listen, the part that creates effortlessly, intuitively, without needing validation. What would happen if you stopped suppressing that part? What would happen if you stopped calling it arrogance and started calling it what it really is: power? And what would happen if you stopped sabotaging your rise because you're afraid of who might not come with you? Because here's the truth: not everyone is meant to walk with you into your greatness. And sometimes we stay small to keep relationships intact that were only ever meant for our survival stage, not our expansion. Greatness isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. And when you remember, you will lose things. Comfort, familiarity, some people. But what you gain is worth infinitely more: clarity, freedom, alignment, wholeness. And isn't that what we're really after? Not applause, not admiration, but the deep, soul-settling feeling of being true to ourselves. That's the reward of power, not control, but coherence, not dominance, but alignment. And that only comes when you stop fearing who you are and start becoming it. The final reckoning: why the world needs you to stop hiding and start leading. There comes a moment in every life where the mirror no longer lies, where no excuse, no delay, no polished mask can numb the truth that's been rising in you like a tide. And that moment is the reckoning, and it doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives in silence, in stillness, in the quiet ache of knowing you've outgrown who you've been pretending to be. Jung called this the encounter with the self, and it is not a metaphor. It is a collision, a confrontation with the full weight of your potential, your power, your presence. And in that moment, you must decide, will I keep hiding behind perfectionism, fear, and false humility? Or will I finally step forward and become? Because make no mistake, the world is not suffering from a lack of productivity. It's suffering from a lack of authentic power. And the longer you withhold yours, the more you contribute to the very chaos you claim to despise. The world needs people who are awake, people who are willing to lead, not from ego, but from alignment, and from depth, from truth. And truth doesn't come from waiting until you're perfect. It comes from showing up as you are raw, unfinished, and unafraid to be seen. That's what leadership looks like now. Not the loudest voice in the room, but the most honest. Not the one with the most control, but the one with the most integrity. And integrity begins when you stop negotiating with your power and start owning it. You don't need a platform to lead. You don't need 1 million followers. You don't need a title or a trophy. What you need is courage. The courage to stop hiding behind your potential and start embodying it. And the courage to be visible, to be misunderstood, to succeed in ways that scare you. Because yes, success will cost you. So will leadership. So will truth. But so does hiding. So does silence. So does dying with your song still inside you. The question is not whether you'll pay a price. The question is, which price are you willing to live with? We've been taught to fear power because we've seen it abused. We've seen it weaponized. But that's not real power. That's domination, insecurity in disguise. True power is service. It's alignment. It's the willingness to stand in your truth so fully that it liberates others to do the same. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But privilege is not the same as comfort. It's not the same as ease. It's earned through confrontation, through saying yes to the discomfort of growth, through refusing to betray yourself just to be liked, through doing the thing you know you're here to do, even when no one claps for it. So ask yourself, what is the cost of your silence? Who are you becoming by staying in hiding? What are you teaching others when you downplay your truth to make them comfortable? Because every time you choose perfection over presence, every time you wait to be ready instead of rising now, you're modeling fear. You're teaching others to do the same. And someone, somewhere, is waiting for you to go first, to break the trance, to speak the words they've been choking on, to live the life they've only imagined. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be honest. And honesty, real honesty, is more powerful than any performance. The final reckoning is this: you are not a perfectionist. You are a powerful being who has been taught to fear your own light. And now the choice is yours. Will you keep rehearsing your life, or will you finally live it? Will you keep hiding your truth, or will you finally lead with it? Jung didn't give us easy answers, he gave us mirrors. And in those mirrors, we see not just our fears, but our destiny. And if you're still watching, still listening, still breathing, you already know it's time. Time to stop apologizing for your presence. Time to stop calling your power too much. Time to stop waiting for someone to give you permission to be who you already are. The world doesn't need another perfect person. The world needs you, not someday, now. So go, speak, lead, not because you're ready, but because you're real.